Hey there. Ready to dive into something really cool? You sent in some fascinating stuff about performance. Excerpts from this book, Steal the Show, by Michael Port.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard of it?
I have, yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, we're really zeroing in on building that performer's mindset. So whether it's, a big presentation or even just, feeling more confident day to day,
Yeah, for sure.
get ready to unlock your inner star power.
It's interesting, right? Because I think those are things that everybody deals with, whether you're facing, a big presentation or a nerve-wracking interview, or just like you said, want to feel more confident day to day. Like the stuff in this book can really work.
It really can. I have to admit, when I first saw the title, I was like, steal the show. I don't know, that sounds a little aggressive. Like, am I trying to one-up everybody?
Right.
But when you really get into it, it's really about owning your authentic voice, which can be hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah. And he really kind of starts off by addressing that concern that I think a lot of people have, which is, what could I possibly say that hasn't been said a million times before?
Right, exactly.
He uses this really, I think, kind of simple but powerful analogy about a lullaby. Like a baby doesn't care about the song as much as the sound of their mother's voice. It's about the connection.
That makes so much sense because it's not about being radically different.
Right.
It's just about the trust and the authenticity that you bring to your message because I think about even the most overused advice can land very differently when it's from someone that you actually trust.
Totally. Totally. And that's where I think the whole vulnerability piece comes in.
Yes.
Which might seem counterintuitive, right? Because if we think, oh, we need to project this image of strength and flawlessness. But he really argues that it's actually showing your human side that can be really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the book actually uses the example of Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, and her book, Lean In. And I remember when I read that a while back, I was really struck by how open she was about her own struggles, even in such a high-profile position.
And I think that's what made it resonate with so many people because she was willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
She made herself relatable.
Totally.
To people who, might have vastly different lived experiences.
Yeah.
But I think, vulnerability is disarming.
Yes.
And it kind of creates a space for a genuine connection.
100%. So it's not about pretending to be perfect. It's more about being authentic and letting people see that human side.
Totally.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But then how do you actually do that? It can be a little intimidating.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It takes practice, for sure.
Sure.
He talks about silencing that inner critic, which I think we all have.
Oh, yeah.
Reframing those negative thoughts. So instead of focusing on what could go wrong, try to shift your attention to what you uniquely bring to the table. Because you have a unique perspective. You have unique experiences,
Yeah, and that makes me think about another kind of concept that he talks about, this idea of being a chameleon, but in an authentic way. And I'll be honest, at first I was like, wait, how can you be adaptable and true to yourself at the same time?
Right. Are you two different people?
Right, exactly.
But I think what he's getting at is just understanding that different situations call for different sides of you.
Oh, okay.
And so, he gives this example of a Marine Corps leader, right? That intensity in command might be essential in the field.
Right.
But imagine bringing that same energy home to your family.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly scream relaxing family time. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you got to be kind of,
adjust to the needs of the situation.
adjust to the needs of the situation. Exactly.
So how do you do that? How do you know which role to play, I guess, without it being inauthentic?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that presence piece and being aware of the context. Who are you interacting with? What are their needs? What are their expectations? And then how could you sort of tap into the parts of yourself that best serve that situation?
So it's you're identifying the needs of the audience, the client, the moment,
Yeah.
and then choosing the right tool from your personality tool belt or something.
Exactly. Exactly. And that kind of takes us to another big one, which is that fear, right?
Yes.
The fear of judgment, the fear of failure. Public speaking is consistently,
Oh, tell me about it.
ranked very high.
Just thinking about it makes me sweat.
Yeah.
It's like that Jerry Seinfeld joke. It's most people, if they have to be at a funeral, they would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy.
Right.
It's so true.
Yeah. And that fear is completely normal. Even seasoned performers, they get nervous too,
So totally.
He says in the book that public speaking is often a bigger fear for people than death.
Yeah. I can see that. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense. It's like that whole spotlight effect. It's like all eyes are on you, judging your every word, every move.
Absolutely. And then we have those internal critics that come in and kind of amplify all those things, right?
Oh,
So we
yeah.
start doubting ourselves. We start, you know, thinking about all the things that could go wrong.
Oh, those inner critics love to show up at the worst possible moments. Like, speaking of critics, the book talks about Bruno Mars and how, like, before his Super Bowl halftime show, like, people were saying he wasn't ready.
Right. Can you imagine?
They were like, he's not big enough for this.
I know.
The
Well,
pressure.
like even someone as talented and successful as Bruno Mars,
Right.
it shows you that those fears and those insecurities don't discriminate.
It's kind of reassuring in a way,
It is.
We're all human, even the superstars.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how do we deal with those voices? Both the ones in our heads. And then, I mean, let's be real. Like, there are always going to be critics out there in the world that you can't escape. Right.
Right. He had some good practical strategies, and one that really resonated with me was this idea of not giving your critics any ammunition.
Ooh, interesting.
Like he uses the example like if you say something like marketing never gets you clients,
Okay. Yeah.
which is easily debatable, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But if you say something like marketing rarely gets you clients directly,
Okay.
you know, it's a little harder to argue with that, you
Yeah.
see.
It's like verbal jujitsu. You're like anticipating those counter arguments
Exactly.
and disarming them with your nuance.
Exactly.
I like that. What about because you mentioned silencing the inner critic as well. Like, are there other ways to kind of disarm them?
Yeah, and I really like how he kind of shifted the perspective,
Yeah.
He was saying, how critical we are of others is often a reflection of how we talk to ourselves.
That's so true.
So if we can practice more kindness and compassion towards others, then it'll actually help cultivate a more supportive inner voice as well.
It's so interesting how those things are all connected,
They are, yeah.
Because, yeah, if you're constantly judging and criticizing everyone else, you're more likely to turn that negativity inwards as well, right? Like, if
Absolutely.
you're just in a more, compassionate and understanding headspace in general, it's going to benefit you both internally and externally.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
And then, another big one that he talks about is this whole concept of yes and.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you might think of improv,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
but it really does apply to so many different settings.
I'll admit when I first read that section, I was a little like, okay, I don't really get how this applies to like giving a presentation or being in a board meeting. But then I started thinking about it in terms of like staying open to possibilities,
Right.
and keeping the energy flowing.
Yeah. He gives a really good example about a Q&A, like an audience Q&A, right?
Okay.
And like the speaker, someone asks a question and maybe the speaker thinks it's irrelevant or even a little bit silly,
Uh-huh.
and their instinct is to shoot it down,
Right.
which like immediately just kills the energy in the room.
Ooh, yeah, I can feel the awkwardness. Like it's such a conversation stopper.
Totally. But when you approach it from that yes and perspective, you acknowledge the question, maybe you even reframe it a little bit,
Yeah.
and then you use it as a bridge to a point that you want to make.
Yeah, it's like you're taking a potential roadblock and turning it into an opportunity, right?
Basically, yeah.
So instead of shutting down the conversation, you're keeping it going,
Right.
but like redirecting it in a way that serves your message.
Exactly. It's being flexible, adaptable,
Right.
while still maintaining control of the narrative.
Mhm.
And that, I think, kind of ties into another really important thing, which is that presence.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I love this part because he has this great anecdote about docking a boat.
Yeah.
Which, again, sounds kind of random at first, but it really speaks to this idea of like visualization and mental rehearsal. And it's so powerful.
It's such a good analogy, right?
Yeah.
Because it's about getting out of your head and being present in the moment.
Totally.
And even if you've done something a million times, like he talks about, even experienced boat captains, they'll still mentally rehearse the process of docking.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
about being intentional, but like fully engaged.
Yeah. So it's not just going through the motions. It's about really being present, like
Yeah.
responsive to whatever comes up, right? Because I'm imagining like a boat captain, they've got to adjust to the wind, the current, the other boats around them. It's not like they can just be on autopilot.
Right, you're 100%.
Okay.
And then he takes that like one step further with this idea of He calls it aesthetic awareness, which sounds kind of heady.
It does, yeah.
But he basically describes it as this like heightened sense of how you're being perceived by others.
Oh, okay.
Like it's almost like a sixth sense that performers develop.
So it's like having a feedback loop, but instead of waiting for like comments or reviews, you're picking up on those cues from your audience in real time. Exactly. So how do you even begin to, like, what does that even look like to develop that kind of awareness? It's a practice, you know. It takes conscious effort, but it's about, really paying attention to your audience's energy. Are they leaning in? Are they looking disengaged? Are they nodding along, or are they confused? And by really tuning into those subtle cues, I think that's how a performer can really start to adjust their delivery, their pacing, even their content on the fly.
So you're like reading the room and then adapting, I guess, your performance based on what you're picking up on to keep people engaged.
Exactly.
That's a cool skill to have.
Yeah.
No matter what you're doing, right?
Right.
So we covered a lot. We talked about finding your voice, embracing vulnerability, silencing that inner critic, the importance of presence. It's pretty amazing how much we can learn from performers, even if we don't, think of ourselves that way. I know. And it does come down to mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about like raw talent,
Yeah.
right? It's about putting in the work and challenging yourself.
You know what that makes me think about? He makes this other point about the importance of choosing early and often.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, like practically, what does that look like, do you think?
Like being decisive,
Yeah.
not getting stuck in that like, perfectionism paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
Just making a choice.
Yeah.
Even if you're not 100% sure it's the right one, because you don't know until you actually get out there.
Peacefully. And that's scary for people. Making a choice when you're not sure if it's the right one.
Totally. And he argues that one of the biggest myths out there is this whole under preparation thing. Like
Yeah.
people are like, oh yeah, I just threw this together last minute.
Right, which they think is like cool,
Right. Which they think is impressive.
Like, oh, they're so good they didn't even have to prepare. But really, the people who are really good know that preparation is everything.
Exactly.
It allows you to do all those other things well,
Right.
like to be present, to improvise if you need to handle whatever comes your way.
And it gives you that confidence.
Yeah.
Because you've put in the work.
Yeah.
So then you can relax a little bit and trust yourself.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Like it's really shifted my perspective on a lot of this stuff. I think the key takeaway for me is just that it's less about like innate talent and it's more about, mindset and preparation and just having the courage to really show up authentically,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And to keep practicing,
Yes.
Like these are skills. The more you do them, the more natural they become.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. So as you're, getting ready to step into your next, big challenge or high stakes moment, just channel your inner Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
Silence those inner critics and remember, you got this.
You got this.
Until next time, keep diving deep.